Of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, we got a really fun show today. We're going to have Mr. Tim Good of the running for the district attorney's position here in Johnson and Somerville County. And so we have a lot to talk about. You know, it's primary season, early voting. I did so yesterday, and you have already voted, I assume.
I have, yes, sir.
Taylor, have you voted yet?
Not yet, but I will.
Okay.
You got till Friday.
You got till Friday, and then you have Tuesday.
Yep.
You know, I used to like to wait till the day to vote, like Election Day and all that, but it just, with my wife's work schedule, it's just so much more convenient to go
or
early
you
vote.
get sick or have a flat tire or whatever.
Well, I have missed one election in my lifetime, and it was because I got sick. It was, and that was 1986. I still regret it. So I've voted in every election since. Now I voted in every race since '86. There's times I've left the ballot, that particular race, blank, but I've always been at election day. But anyway, Taylor, you need to go vote.
I will.
These young people.
That's a promise, right?
That's a promise.
You're gonna vote.
Yeah.
I've never voted in my life.
Have you really not?
No, yes, I have. Come on.
Okay. Well,
It was a joke.
Okay. Well, I know people that really haven't voted, and I'm like, wait a minute. I hear you bellyache about politics all the time, and you're not
I do
voting.
just like you say. I write Brad Allard in every single time.
There you go.
Writing candidate.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about the race. We're going to talk about what he would do, assuming he wins, with the office, response to some of the issues that have been brought up in the campaign, and just general conversation, about what he's seeing out there in campaign land. I mean, I'm sure you're getting quite an education, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go through the sponsors, though. We got to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Otto, at our place. I'll be there Thursday morning for breakfast with my guys from my Sunday school class, and it's always a great meal, great time. I was there last Friday, so I spent a lot of time there, you might think. It really is. It is a good place to go for conversation, for just to relax, because it's a low-stress environment. The food's great and whatever. And he's opening up Gina Pizza very, very soon, and he sent me this picture yesterday, and I was really just pleased to see it. This is Gina's interior, and on the screen, this...
You know that guy?
I do. Good-looking man on the left is, yes, Mr. Allard's Neighborhood from yesterday. He was playing the YouTube clip, and so what he's going to do on one of those TVs, he's not going to just show my show, Endless Loop, or anything like that, but he's going to show my show occasionally when he gets it on YouTube, and there's a couple other Burleson-related YouTube-related episodes. I don't know what you call them, endeavors. That's a better word. And he's going to be running them, promote businesses and whatever else. So it's going to be a real promotional thing for the city of Burleson. And I would not doubt that he'll probably have other public information on that screen and whatever else. So I was really excited when he sent me that, because that's good publicity.
It is.
To have somebody like Otto do that is a real honor. Also, Wild Cigar and Culture. When this is all over, you might want to drop by there and have a smoke or have a decent cigar and decent drink or whatever, if that's your thing. But it's a good place to do it. It is also a good place to go think. It's quiet. It's a cultured atmosphere. It's not like some dive. So it's a really nice place.
It is. It's very nice.
And so
there's no cover charge like in most places.
That's right. And people say, well, I don't smoke cigars. Well, a lot of people do, and so you can buy them there, or a gift card, or you can take them there for a drink and whatever else. And it really is a nice place. Also, next week on Tuesday, I'll have Tiffany Nico on. She's going to be talking about the latest magazine, and also the same Paddy's Day pub crawl that's on March 16th. She's running that, and she does a really good job with these events. She does another one around 4th of July that's very well attended and very popular. But Local Life magazine will be out probably this weekend, and so you'll see it in your mailbox if you're one of the fortunate 30,000, or you'll see it at the various retail outlets. There's always several extra copies at Southern Gym or at our place or other retail establishments. And speaking of Southern Gym, you need to take your wife here after it's over, because we'll be talking a little bit about family. We like to keep a zone of privacy, of course, but I'm sure that this has been something that she's had to be involved in. In fact, I met her yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But it just it is it is something that the whole family is involved in, whether they like it or not.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
But anyway, also thank you to two maids. Well, I'm going to go back to Southern Jim. Do you mind? I'd kind of shorted Kayla because she has something coming up in about 2 or 3 months. But May 4th, there's going to be the Kentucky Derby's on that day. There's going to be a Kentucky Derby event at Southern Jim. Gayla's really into horse racing.
Okay.
And she's an equestrian, and she has a couple of horses herself. Her husband's a vet. And so this is something they're involved in. And so there's going to be an event, and there's going to be a charity event as well for Wings of Hope, which is I met on Saturday at the Chamber of Commerce Showcase. And they are a equine therapy group, for people, various emotional or other disabilities, being around animals. Apparently it's very good therapy. And so they do that with horse riding and stuff like that. So Southern Jim over to Standard. Now back to Two Maids. Two Maids, this is a really interesting business. Brenda Ramirez has a really good business going on. You pay based on their rating as opposed to, they rate them. That's how they get paid. Instead of, getting paid by an hour or something like that, there's a fee, and then you rate them, and whatever that fee is, it's going to be based on the ratings that you give the service. So if you're interested in that for your business or your home or your office or whatnot, 817-764-0733 or twomaidscleaning.com/Burleson. And our friends over at Old Pro Roofing. It's John Williams, 817-734-2756. This is when you need to get your roof taken care of. Don't do it when it's raining. That's not going to help. But he'll come and tell you what the true status of your roof is. It's not going to be some upsell, some doomsday scenario. So John will tell you you're good to go or not. So there you go. 817-734-2756. Also Camco, our mortgage broker, Sammy Campbell, Candy Gal. Been doing it in this town for 20 years. I've used them twice in other stops. Now they have their own business. So call Sammy at 817-778-4592 or Candy at 817-925-2661. And they'll tell you what's going on with the rates, which I don't know much about. Everybody speculates, but they know. So you're looking to finance a home or refinance a home, give them a call. And a couple of our nonprofits are very active. This month, up until Thursday, if you give a gift to Next Step, it'll be matched. There's a matching gift program going on. And so they're trying to raise around $15,000. And they do such great work. They really are a place of need for a lot of people in this community that are dealing with either unexpected or other type of pregnancies, maybe problem pregnancies or financial issues related to pregnancies or whatnot. And they are very, very good at helping people get through this very difficult time. So it's a good program to have. And also, this is something you, Mr. Good, are somewhat involved in. That's the Reach Pop-Up prom event beginning tomorrow and Friday. No, get it right. Thursday and Friday, 29th and the 1st over at First Baptist. They're going to have prom dresses and some clothing
Suits.
for young men and some suits.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be involved in that, right?
Yeah, so one of the big things is a lot of the young men who show up, they don't never had a suit before, never worn a suit before. So if anybody watching this that's a guy that knows how to wear suits, if you guys want to show up, volunteer, and help young men pick out suits for prom, I'll be there on the 29th simply because I like, I wear a suit every day to work. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing they're doing.
Well, and that really is because as an ex-school teacher, I involved in prom many, many times. Got to chaperone a few and all this other stuff. But it was it's a big, big deal. And if you're a young person and you're not being involved in that, it leaves a mark on you. It does. It's for us old guys, we think, oh, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal because it's a culminating event of your high school career. You see all your friends and people you gone to school with all your life, all dressed up. It really is interesting because I see kids when they come to school and they're wearing jeans and a t-shirt, right, or something like that, and they go in there and wow, you really clean up, that kind of thing.
Right.
All right, I'm a little dry today. How about you, Taylor? Did you get over that sinus business yesterday?
Yeah, I feel way better.
Well, I was reading
Lots of drugs.
Lots of drugs. Okay, all right. Speaking of drugs, talking about district attorney business. So
Let's do it.
Segways.
That segue was good, though.
I've been paying attention to this race and some of the issues brought up, both in social media. I've had Mr. Hanna sit in that seat and have him give his side of the issues and whatever else. And one of the things that you brought up as well was the difficulty in maintaining a full complement of staff. Mr. Hanna's position is that that's a statewide thing that isn't just for Johnson County. And a lot of it has to do with the difficulty in recruiting attorneys that want to do this kind of work. I'll just let you respond to if that's what's happening here in Johnson County and let you put it in your own words.
I guess I see it differently. So there is some truth to the fact that attorneys coming out of law school are less likely to be a prosecutor than they were 10, 20 years before. Same problem you're having with policing. A lot of people don't want to do policing. A lot of people don't want to do prosecution. But I disagree. One of the things is, like I've talked about on the campaign trail, is the DA's office, like Tarrant County, is very good about being on presence at law schools on campus during career days, 1L, 2L, 3L a year, to explain what a DA's office is, what the benefits are, gaining litigation experience, et cetera. And so one thing at the DA's office in Johnson we don't do is we do not go to the two law schools, which are within 30 minutes drive of the office, and go to those career days and talk to people and say, and actually compete with Tarrant County, honestly, and say, Tarrant County, they've got a great system up there, but you're going to get lost in it. You could have a more local, small-town feel and get more litigation experience down in a smaller DA's office. And so I think we got a lot of good sales, presentation there, and we're not doing that. The other thing is you can't limit yourself. So one of the things we do in Johnson County is we do not hire from the county attorney's office. And I think that's a big mistake. So there's a gentleman's agreement between district attorney and your county attorney, Bill Moore, is that Mr. Hanna will not hire anybody out of Mr. Moore's office just so that he doesn't have staffing issues. Anywhere else in the state of Texas, you always have the misdemeanor attorneys that cut their chops in misdemeanor cases. They gain skill and ability, and then they get hired to the district attorney's office. That feeder program has always been there. But for the past 30 years, that's been the deal that's been struck in Johnson County. So I find it interesting that someone wants to complain about staffing and point to all these external factors, but will not address the internal factors of what decisions the office has made, which has limited our ability to hire attorneys just from the floor above us.
So, assuming you win, that's something you'll change, apparently.
Yeah, that deal's off. That is not good for Johnson County.
Okay.
It's nothing personal against Mr. Moore. It's just simply the system that works is hiring misdemeanor prosecutors.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also related to pay. What can you do about the pay issue?
The pay issue is simply going to the commissioner and explaining you have to pay, just like for city council, for police departments, the commissioners, for the DA's office, you have to pay the attorneys to attract them down here. The great thing is, I think we can compete with Tarrant County because Tarrant County has to pay all of them a certain range, a big bunch of money. We only have to outstrip them by a couple $1,000s to get 5 or 10 down here. And so it's easier when it comes to budget and taxes. We have to pay a lot less money to attract people down here, while they have to pay a lot more money in Tarrant County to try to keep all of their spots filled.
Well, Mr. Hanna's point was that, again, this is nothing to do with the DA's office itself in Johnson County. It's it's a statewide thing. It's a cultural thing, whatever else. But some of the rebuttal to that is no. There's been some unhappiness in the.
That's also true.
Okay, how are you going to fix that?
So that's just going to be simply changing culture. I think one of the biggest problems is Mr. Hanna has always run the office where every decision goes through him, and so he does no agency to his individual prosecutor. So we work any job. If you don't have agency and if you don't get to be bought into the process, you're going to become unhappy. You're not fulfilled by that job.
Would you still maintain the position, though, if you are the DA, that you are the final decider about certain types of cases and certain profile cases?
Yeah. So I think on murder cases, rape cases, there's probably those big cases. I would say I'm the final decision maker on those. But any case that any ADA has, ultimately, whoever's elected is their responsibility. If there's a lowball offer that gets made, it is whoever's elected's fault. But I think the individual line prosecutors need to have more authority to make decisions, because you need to hire people and train people that you can trust. That's what it comes down to. There comes a point where the office should be able to run itself because you've hired the type of people who can make it run.
So you don't see yourself being involved in every decision that your assistants would make?
No, and also don't think it's healthy for the office to do that.
Well, I would imagine, but like you said, though, you are ultimately responsible for every decision they make, and if they do make too generous an offer, or if they're, on the other hand, maybe too punitive in their offer, you're the one that's going to have to answer for it. Now I know that it goes downhill, and you'll have some words with that young man or woman, but still, the point is that you're going to have to deal with all of that.
Correct. Yeah.
And you're sounds like you're willing to do it.
But that's the trade-off. Like I said, for someone to have buy-in in agency, you have to have that trade-off where, one, the buck stops. Whoever's elected, they're responsible. But you have to have people you can trust. That can. A good leader gives a vision and says, this is what I want the office to do on these types of cases. This is what I want to see going forward. And once you have a vision, it's really up to the people who work with you to then implement that vision.
Yeah, and it's been a difficult election, to be frank, because I see people that I know and respect support Mr. Hanna. And then I see a lot of other people say, no, let me tell you what happened with my experience with the district attorney's office.
Right.
And it's some unpleasant reading. You say, well, this happened, or I had this happen to me, and I did not get what I felt like was justice, or, this happened to my son or daughter, and, the plea bargain was too generous. Now, plea bargain, though, is part of the process, right?
It is.
And it's not something that you plan on changing, or do you plan on just altering the terms of plea bargaining?
Maybe altering some of the terms of plea bargain. So anywhere, any state, any county in Texas, about 90% to 95% of all cases are moved by plea bargain. That's how it works. You can't try every case.
Right.
The difference is the play. It's basically you're playing poker, right? You're offering something that you say, I think I can get pretty close to this from a jury, but it has to be a little lower for the defendant to go, okay, that's a better bargain than me risking it with the jury. So there's always that play and interchange. But there are some cases I think when you sit down with the family, let's say you have a manslaughter case and someone's daughter has been killed, and they're saying, we don't like the offer. Sometimes I think it's your job to say, this is just going to be a trial. You need to let 12 people in the community decide, because you guys are saying you don't want to plea this. Let's let 12 people figure it out. It's hard to put a number sometimes, particularly when the family's saying, we don't like the number you're picking.
Well, how big a role does the victim play in the plea bargaining process?
It just depends on how much the individual office allows them to be involved. So technically, there are two victims to any case. It's always the state of Texas, and then there's a person involved, there's a second victim or primary victim. Their voice should be heard no matter what the case is. That goes to another issue I have, is I want to have a victim impact coordinator, or actually multiple ones once we get there, where the victims are more involved. Because I can't tell you how many times at office where you have someone that you call and go, it's been 4 months since the case has been filed, and you call them as the prosecutor, and they go, I haven't heard anything from the office. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, has the case been indicted, or you say the case has been indicted. They go, what does that mean? Like, is there a trial? What's going on? So they need to be more involved for the beginning. And I think the more they're involved in explaining this is a slow process, this is the range of punishment, it helps them to have buy-in. Because honestly, no one expects to be a victim of a crime. But when it happens, you're getting victimized a second time by being left out of the process. Most of the time, the DA's office now, it is right before a case goes to trial, which is 2 years later, you're getting a call and they go, I didn't even know this case was still active.
Well, most of the time when I read these kind of anecdotes on Facebook or other social media, it's not so much I disbelieve them, but, I am reading something by a very upset or angry person. But I do know of a couple of cases that I know that personally, the story. I mean, I knew the story prior to it ever coming out in public, and they were very upset, to be frank. Right. They didn't feel like there was a lot of push towards resolution on their case, and that that the DA's office didn't take it as seriously as they did.
Or they felt they were browbeat into something.
So something like that. This one particular case, I remember somebody who was injured by a drive-by shooting in effect, and nothing really happened from it. And there's like, they thought, it wasn't like the perpetrator was unknown. He was arrested. Okay. But very little came from it.
Really?
Yeah. And so I knew that story already. And then it was brought up again. I saw on another Facebook posting. There's a lot of Facebook posting going on about this particular race.
There is.
Much more than the other races even, So I think probably of all the local races, by far, this is one gotten the most attention.
Yeah.
And so, but again, when I read this, I know I'm reading some written by somebody who's got, really angry with the DA's office.
Mm-hmm.
So, we take that into account. But I'm reading too many stories about certain types of cases not being pursued with the kind of vigor these people want.
Right.
And I think that's one reason why you're getting a lot of support from a lot of different areas of the community.
I think so. I mean, I think the public outcry. So before I announced I was going to run, I didn't know what kind of connection or response I was going to get. I've been completely shocked about how many people have come out, supported me, how many stories I've heard about dissatisfaction. Because even the DA's office, I have my little slice of the pie of my cases. So I wasn't fully aware of all the stuff going on. So I've heard horrendous stories about the way people have been treated, and then they're up there online that I didn't even know anything about when I worked there.
Well, and that's, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on Mr. Hanna's character, but I do believe that there are certain types of cases that they do go after with a great deal of vigor, and some that they don't.
Drugs are a big deal in the DA's office,
right? And I've known some families that have been involved, with DAs and related, and they would come about drugs. I mean, and they would come after them like hammer and tong.
Oh yeah.
And then you have these other types of cases that were just as serious, but they weren't pursued nearly with the same kind of intensity.
And that's one of my chief complaints. Like I'm hard on drugs, but I think you got to be careful when you have one thing that's the only thing you focus on, because you have drugs are one. They do lead to all of the crime. There's a good argument for that. But when you have an actual crime like a drive-by shooting, like you described, or a manslaughter case or a murder case, that's why we hate drugs, is because of what it leads to. But when you have the crimes they've led to, we just go soft or ignore or don't really prosecute. I don't understand that mentality. Like, why do we hate drugs? If the crimes that they produce, we don't hate them just as much.
Well, the two of y'all, Mr. Henry and yourself, you've been in public forums, right?
We have, yes.
Did these questions come up?
Sometimes. So the only time we've had a Q&A was in Somerville. He didn't make that one. Most of the forums are kind of vanilla, I guess the best way to describe it, because most of the forums, it's I get 3 minutes to speak, he gets 3 minutes to speak. There's not generally questions from the audience. Now, the Lone Star Patriots is having a forum tonight at 7 o'clock at the Co-op building on Bethesda, and it's supposed to be strictly questions from the audience. So I think this is going to be the one and only time in this race where anybody who wants to say, I got a question for you, Mr. Good, Mr. Hanna, or anybody else running for races that's going to be there to actually ask questions versus just hearing our little stump speeches they've heard everywhere else.
Yes. Well, to be specific, what I've heard was that domestic violence cases are not given the priority that some people in the community wish they would.
I mean, I could tell you even working there, they aren't. It's
Why is that? I did ask Mr. Hanna that question, and his response more or less was the difficulty in getting people to cooperate in these cases.
No, so I don't think they're appreciating the DA's office as being a precursor to someone getting murdered or the violence that attributes to police officers. It's, for some reason, he just does not like those cases. If there's any victim we call on a regular basis, it's a domestic violence victim. And it's simply to ask, do you want to go forward? So like every 2 months, like clockwork, the assistants are told, call this victim and make sure she still wants to go forward. And so you have this woman that she's going from highs and lows, and you're catching her on a low. And she goes, no, it's been 6 months. Everything seems fine. I want to dismiss the case. The case is dismissed that day. I don't know why it's like that, but it's not doing anybody any justice.
Well, if the woman wants the case dismissed, what can you do about it other than dismiss the case?
No. So there are always two victims to any crime. So the state can take a case if the state wants to. Now, there are some times that if the victim doesn't want to do anything, you can't go after all those cases. But, I mean, if you have a case, like what I'm thinking about right now, you have a woman, she's been strangled to the point of unconsciousness, defecated on herself, and you have all this medical evidence. I mean, she's almost murdered. She doesn't want to go forward. That's tough. You can still try that case without her with the medical evidence. She can take that stand and sit there and say, I still love the guy. I don't want anything to happen. But you have to have consequences. You cannot treat another human being that way and get away with it because you've convinced your victim not to prosecute you.
I understand that's a real common thing, though, for a victim to recant or change their mind or whatever because they don't want the perpetrator to get in trouble.
Correct.
Or he's the father of my children, or, of course, I'm sure you've probably seen domestic violence where the perpetrator is a woman, right? The wife or whatever.
It's a rarer thing, but yes,
yeah,
it does
much
happen.
rarer, I'd imagine. But mostly it's probably, the male in the situation committing the crime.
Correct.
But they're saying, well, if he goes to jail, how I'll pay bills. I got 2 kids with him, and blah 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 blah. So I would imagine that would be tough, and so I'm not really trying to defend Mr. Hen on this, but I do kind of see the difficulty in these kind of cases, and maybe he doesn't think it's a good use of resources or something like
let's
that.
also address this. So when we're talking about DA's race or district attorney's station on family violence is generally a misdemeanor. By the time it gets to the felony level, either you're a repeat offender or you've done something like you've used a deadly weapon or you've strangled somebody. So family domestic violence is a much higher degree of domestic violence. It's not the garden variety that you see or hear about generally. So when you're saying I don't have resources to handle the more serious cases, I think there's a problem there.
Sherry Scott worked with CASA, as I'm sure you're familiar with that organization.
I am.
I hope you will advocate for abused children and hold the abusers accountable. Through my work with CASA, I saw so many parents not charged.
Yeah.
Is that true? I mean, it is true if Sherry says it. I don't mean it like that, but is that your view as well?
Well, see, I don't know. So one of the things where she's talking about, so CASA works in the CPS cases. So that's in a kind of a civil family court setting. I don't know if those cases are not charged or not. I would like to see those cases filed. If they're not getting filed, we don't know about them. But absolutely, if you injure a child, particularly you injure a child and you're involved in a CPS case, there needs to be some consequences of that.
Well, Sherry, I didn't mean to imply that you weren't telling the truth that way I phrased it. No, I believe you 100%. I just wanted to know if Mr. Good also saw it that way as well from his vantage point. But where I have seen that, I've heard this before. I had a couple students, in fact, that were with CASA and at Hill College and whatnot, and they had similar stories.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
That they had a lot of cases that they thought were pretty serious, and nothing really came from that.
All I can say is the injured children cases that I saw in the DA's office generally were a divorce happening case, but I know the CPS court downstairs is full, so it is strange that you have CPS involved in a bunch of cases downstairs, but there's no felonies reaching the DA's office. So I don't know why they getting filed and rejected. 'Cause I don't get to see all the cases when they come in, but clearly there's a disconnect. I didn't see them on the trial level.
It sounds like it's like you in the DA's office and the city attorney's office, and now CPS all operate in different spheres, but they
Some effect, yes.
But you don't integrate well.
No, there's some truth to that. Absolutely.
Okay, is that something you would change? Is that something you could change?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to have the costs as assigned to cases. If you feel like there's a case that's not being handled well, come talk to the DA's office. I'll get you in contact with the investigators, and we can look into that. So, I mean, for people who don't know what CAS is, court-appointed special advocates, when you have a CPS case, you got the parents, they have attorneys assigned to them. You got the kids, they have attorneys assigned to them. But what CAS is, just a regular volunteer from the community that says, they're kind of the middle of the road shining light that says, I don't work for CPS, I don't work for the state. I'm an average citizen, and they help advise the judge on, is this working out? Are the parenting classes being met? Is CPS being fair to the parents? Are the parents actually doing what they're supposed to do? In a CPS case, CASA is probably the most important person that appears in court.
Well, that, like I said, you hear stories like this, and I know that the DA's office can't be everywhere. It's like the police, they can't be everywhere all the time. But it sounds like there's too many things like this falling through the cracks.
It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's concerning because that shouldn't be that way. We have the resources to do it, and we have the volunteers. Sherry's saying here it's the hardest volunteer job she ever had. I wouldn't doubt that at all. I couldn't imagine working with abused children.
Oh, yeah.
And then finding out the abuser is a slap on the wrist at best,
right?
If at all. You want to take them out and give them a beating and then begin to adjudicate the case.
Exactly.
But it's, can you say that if you are elected, these things, well, I know they'll be addressed. Do you think they can be better resolved?
I think so. I would love to see a better relationship with CASA, or actually a relationship created with CASA, with the DA's office, where when, like I said, a CASA volunteer wants to come and say, I've got a case, because some cases don't rise to the level of felony, but they're saying, I see this case, I see this abuse, and they bring it to the DA's office attention, we'll look into it. Because the most vulnerable people in our community, of course, are our children. Yeah. And if someone's not looking into it, I mean, CPS is there trying to fix the situation and hopefully get the kids back to their parents, but there also has to be consequences if you've done something terrible to a child.
Yeah, and I'm sure Mr. Hanna feels that way too. I mean, I don't want to castigate him or characterize him as unsympathetic about this, but it just I'm hearing too many stories like this. And and if you are elected, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to really work hard to keep things like this from falling in the cracks. You have a lot of balls to juggle, and it's going to be tough. How are you going to do this? I mean, what kind of people are you going to be looking for? What kind of staff are you going to surround yourself with?
I think it goes back to what we talked about before. Once you get the office, then give it a vision. Right now, Mr. Hanna runs everything. And I think that's part of the reason why things fall through the crack, because he is so focused on trying to make everything in the office run.
Yeah.
My position is going to be, I'm honestly not going to be in the office probably as much as Mr. Hanna. I'll be working the same amount of hours and maybe more, but you need to be out in the community. One of my big things I've told the police departments is I will regularly meet with the chiefs of police and the sergeants and lieutenants to see how are things going in their city. Is the DA's office listening to them? I would like to meet with CASA and say, are there cases that you have right now? You say nothing's happening. Either the police department has shrugged it off or whatever it is, but that way there's better understanding of what's happening outside the office.
How would you characterize the DA's office relationship with law enforcement right now?
I think it's terrible, and that's one of the reasons I decided to run. Now, I know that on the upper level, you got all the sheriffs are backing Mr. Hanna.
That's right.
And that's fine. But these are all political figures. If you talk to any deputy, talk to any police officer, back before I ran, that was one of the things I saw them disrespected all the time, treated poorly by Mr. Hanna and some of his staff. And so that's one of the things I want to see change is you got to restore those relationships. And also the other part is we've been rejecting cases, whole mill, just so we can keep the numbers down. So officers work tremendously hard in these cases. And then they get filed. I just talked to the agency last week, and they said, we're never told why they get rejected. Did we do a bad job? Is it your numbers were too high? What is it? Because we can't learn. We're just left guessing in the dark of, is this the type of case DA cares about? Or is it just was a bad week to file it? And so there needs to be more communication with police departments. Let them know, one, you're appreciated. They work every case they get. When it gets to the DA's office, if we can't take it, why why did we have to reject it?
One of the hardest things about being in a public position like this, and I've told this to candidates and office holders, the reason I think I would not be a very good office holder is because I deal a lot with personal relationships, and I'd have a hard time bringing negative news or telling somebody no. This is somebody I've known for a long time. Do you think you'll be able to do that? Because there's going to be people you've known all your life, or known in this community, that they may be involved in some legal situation. Right. Are you going to be able to separate yourself from that?
Well, I'm going to take a completely different approach than Mr. Hanna has. I don't think the DA has any. He or whoever's elected, he or she, any DA should not be involved in a case where they have a personal interest, personal friend, or any kind of connection. I think you're going to see a lot more recusals if I'm elected. If you have a best friend, you got a pastor, or you've got an old buddy from school that's being investigated for a crime, that's a situation where the DA's office or the district attorney needs to stay out and ask for another prosecutor to come in and look at the case.
Well, I'm taking my information from social media, but I've heard about favoritism or relationships driving the decision as opposed to the facts of the case and things like that.
That's my position. I think absolutely it's who you are or who you know that determines the outcome.
When I had my discussion with Mr. Hanna, he denied this as you might expect, and I try to be fair with him and all this, but being in a public position, sometimes you can't control what's being said about you. And
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
And so, and that's kind of his position. Unhappy people get on social media and make their grievances known.
I mean,
are you prepared to deal with that? Because that's going to happen to you too.
I know. Am I prepared? Do I want to have that? No.
Right.
But I mean, to answer that, there's a Dr. Dang in Cleveland. That case had gone on. He'd been accused of molesting girls for a long, long time. DA's office was aware of it. And it wasn't until I don't remember exactly what happened, but basically a decade later, special prosecutors were finally assigned. He gets prosecuted. He gets, convicted, sent to the penitentiary. But that was a situation where a district attorney who knows Dr. Dang and maybe it has ADAs that go to Dr. Dang as their doctor, we should not have been involved in that case. And to the point, the victims in that case, when they testified, they said, we were told by the DA's office, we're not going to do anything with your case. The DA's office was aware of the allegations.
Can you move that case to some other county?
You can move it to another county, or you can just have a special prosecutor brought in, which means you call, Hood County, Tarrant County, any other county, say, can you loan me a prosecutor that can investigate this case? Because it involves someone that I may have a bias for or against, and so we need somebody that's objective that can look at the case.
Well, okay. Like I mentioned before, it's hard to separate yourself from these personal relationships when we are still a fairly small community, Burleson, Cleveland,
Correct, yeah.
Johnson County. This isn't like Dallas or Harris County or whatever else where you got hundreds of prosecutors probably, and the chances of in the DA are very slim. Here, the chances are fairly good, because y'all are members of the community. I guess what I'm taking away from this is that you're going to make a concerted effort to be objective and recuse yourself from situations that may involve people you know.
No, and I think that's good for me and for the office, but it's good for the public. You need to have doesn't matter what it is for real, the appearance. You need to have the appearance that the office is not being involved in showing favoritism to somebody. So the best way to keep the integrity of the office intact is saying when there's somebody that's connected to the district attorney, we're not going to be involved in that prosecution. Someone else will be asked to step in.
Is it possible that some of this disconnect has to do with what you referred to last time you were here about the office not keeping up with the technology? Now, Mr. Hanna told us that there's a new technology system coming in. It should be online roughly in October or something like that.
I've heard about this, yeah.
Yeah. Is this disconnect between the departments, this disconnect between the community, the disconnect with the police officers and the DA's office, is this a result of the technology?
In some effect, yes. I mean, there are some situations with the technology where you'll have an investigation, let's say in Godly, for somebody committing fraud, whether it's solar panels or some fencing scheme, and they're not doing the work. And the same investigations happen in Alvarado and in Burleson. The agencies don't know all three are investigating the same person. So if you have the same software and they can all get in there and look and go search by subject by name, okay, I see an investigation already in progress. You can put those together and combine resources. Now, as to the technology Mr. Hanna is talking about, he was not involved in any form or fashion with getting that technology. That's something that the sheriff had to tell him about, so that way he would have a talking point on the campaign trail of we are getting technology. I guarantee he can't explain how that technology has any relation to the DA's office because it's really designed for fire and police.
Well, I'm trying to be fair to Mr. Hanna because I don't want to, misconstrue his words, but the impression I got was that he had people on his staff to handle that, assistants, whatnot. People are complaining that he doesn't have like a laptop in his desk and stuff like that. And he's like, I don't need one. I have people that do that for me. Are you going to be more hands-on than that?
Am I going to use the computer and type? Yeah, absolutely.
But you're going to be more involved in coordinating this technology as opposed to being like above all of that. I mean, I hate technology, to tell you the truth. I could empathize with Mr. Hanna a little bit on that because I don't like technology either. Sorry, Taylor. That's why I have him around.
I get you.
Yeah, but are you going to be more? Yeah, okay. Are you going to be more hands-on than that?
Well, I am, but to that point, I mean, you take advice and listen to Taylor and let Taylor do all this for you, right?
Yeah.
The problem in the office has always been we explained this is something new we need to do, we need to implement, and he says no because he doesn't understand the need for it. It doesn't matter if you don't like technology. The point is you realize it has to be used.
It has to be used. I mean, I'm involved in a contract job right now that's learning how to manipulate all that stuff has really been a problem for me. It's not the material, it's the technology involved with it.
Exactly.
And it's been an education. But anyway, that's let's talk about the campaign itself. I was there yesterday to early vote. And I asked my wife after we met your wife. I didn't know she was your wife at the time. I said, I bet that was Mr. Good's wife.
It was.
Yeah. So, and she, I guess, was your biggest supporter. How does this impact the family? I know you have children and obviously a wife, and this is a family enterprise.
It is. For my young kids, my oldest is 4. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
honestly.
right.
And which is, I think, kind of a blessing too. For me and my wife, I mean, it's hard. It's stressful. I'm sure it's stressful for Mr. Hanna. Campaigning is not for the faint of heart. It's a dirty, disgusting, tiring process that.
You got to put up with a lot of half truths and outright falsehoods.
Exactly, and so and just the daily grind as well. I take away all the negativity of the campaign. The daily grind can wear you down, but it is a family effort. I've got my parents helping out, her parents helping out. It is definitely everybody comes together and works on it, but it's tiring. And I see why a lot of people we all like to sit on the sidelines and complain about politics, and that kind of jumping over the line and say, I'm going to get involved. I see why people don't do it.
Well, politics has always been unfair. I mean, this isn't a 21st century phenomenon. It just social media amps it up a lot
absolutely.
more. But I mean, you read, you're a history man as well. You've read those campaigns from the 1800s, and they're just as nasty
they
as
were
ever been.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And so this is just an unfortunate part of the process, but it is hard on the family. Now, your kids are too small to really be aware of what's going on. But
Exactly.
I've had other candidates and office holders that have children old enough to see what's being said about their parents on social media.
Right.
And particularly like school board children.
Oh, yeah.
The children school board members. They go into school, and then not every teacher is discreet as they need to be, or some kids are mad at their. I remember poor Mr. Johnson when he was on the school board. His daughter was in my class, and it's like she was responsible for every vote he took, and that kind of crap.
Yeah.
So it is tough, but apparently your wife seemed to be pretty enthusiastic, about you running. But there was, I'm sure, quite some
She's my
conversation.
biggest support. I mean, I would definitely not be able to do this whole process without her. That's 100% truth.
Yeah, but it's hardest on the families because you see something about yourself that's negative and it's irritating, but to your loved one, they want to go out and take a bat to them.
Oh yeah, that's completely true.
That's part of it. But you're right though. A lot of people like to bellyache, but they don't like to serve. I was asked to run on the school board many years ago, after I retired, and my wife, she shot that thing down. I mean, I said, hey, how about me running for school? No, you're not running for school board. And the reason why?
Okay.
She didn't want our kids to be targeted.
I get that.
Yeah, she said, "I'm not having you do that with our, with our children being targeted by, gossip or innuendo," and so that pretty much took care of that.
Right.
And see, I wouldn't run against my wife's wishes. I'm not blaming her. Now, would I have done it if she said, let's think about it, pray about it, think about it some more? Maybe, maybe not, but I would never have done it against my wife.
Right.
My wife's wishes on that.
And you mentioned targeting, so particularly for judges' races and DA's races, like if you look at my website, you're going to see pictures of my kids as they're walking away. You're never going to see the family flower. We're all holding hands and hugging. DA's races, judge races, once you're in, you make a lot of enemies. I mean, everybody that appears before you, all the felons that get arrested, we've had that problem with our judges. All of our judges have been threatened in some form or fashion.
I'm friends with John Neal, and we talked about that a long time ago. And his wife, I worked with his wife for about 3 years at a private school, and it wasn't common, but they had some frightening comments sent their direction over the course of his career. And that's going to happen to you too. I'm afraid.
It is. But the problem is that most people, they have this information they put out during the campaign, and they got pictures of their kids, or there's all their names. I've been in court where a defendant will look at a judge and say, "How is so and so today?" And they're referencing one of their children as intimidation factor. So yeah, it's definitely an issue out there. So that's why you will never see a picture of me, my family, on social media or my campaign website for that very reason, for their safety.
Well, that's a good idea. I mean, I'm getting a lot of brochures in the mail, a lot of mailers and stuff, about 2 or 3 every day from the various candidates, and they all have their family in there, it seems like. And,
right.
And that's the very reason why my wife said no, because I'm running for a position. Would I have my kids out there? Would I put them on social media? Would I have a picture of them on a flyer? She said no way, and so that is a cost of doing business almost if you want to do this. So
it is. But you can take steps, I think, and that's what I'm trying to do to mitigate some of those risks.
But all this had to be brought up in conversation. So what in the end made you say, yes, I will do this? And go through the campaigning and the fundraising and the slings and arrows and all this other stuff.
I think it was just kind of the last 2 years I was there, just kind of always belly aching to either my wife or some friends about mismanagement, things not being doing right, cases I didn't think were handled correctly, police officers I felt were treated unfairly, but it kind of all escalates in April of last year. There's I work a lot with law enforcement, which means I have a lot of contacts outside of Johnson County. And I get a call from the FBI, and they say, we've got a potential school shooter in Burleson. And I was like, okay, so they give me all the detail about he's hyper obsessed with Columbine, which is the major school shooting from the 90s. He's buying the same clothes. He keeps researching that. What's the closest school to his house? How many schools are in 5-mile radius? What's the highest elevation point in Johnson County? All this stuff. And then it ends with he's already detonated a test bomb in Johnson County. And they go, we need to get a warrant for this guy. And the problem is on the federal side, you can't get a warrant for the bomb. They actually videotaped it and put it on social media because it didn't have fragmentation. So on the federal side, a bomb has to have fragmentation, which means it has shrapnel it produces. On the state side, it just has to create a loud report that causes alarm. And so we knew we had 27 calls for service that night when the bomb went off. And then we went out, they couldn't find anything, but the FBI had been tracking this guy. And so I'd sat down with Mr. Hannon and briefed him on that because we need to get a state warrant to help the FBI get to a state judge, help them, draft a warrant that they could present. And he just said, we're not going to get involved in this. These are kids playing in the woods with souped up fireworks. And now everything I just told you is what we told him. And I remember leaving that meeting because he said, don't get involved, don't do anything. He said, and his big focus was, he kept saying, they're going to drop us in the grease. They're going to drop us in the grease. If they're going to get him, if there's a case, they're going to make us prosecute it, and they're not going to do it. And I remember leaving.
What's the problem with that?
At the end and where we are right now, I think we're so hyper case focused. We're it just, like I said, I'm talking to all the agencies, and they say we're having tons of cases just rejected, whole cloth. And I think there's a stress with the number of people leaving the office and the crime that's going up, just trying to keep the numbers down.
Well, finish your story. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just thought that doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Well, it didn't make sense to me. I mean, this is, I think, a few weeks after Uvalde, and I'm realizing, I'm thinking about my boys and the fact that they're going to go to school and someone's going to be in charge. And if somebody knew about something like this and something ever happened to one of my kids, I would be just beside myself. And then I thought about everybody's kids are out there. There are people I don't know. Their kids are going to the school. We don't know what school he's going to pick, but there are kids going to a school. And unless something happens, so something has to be done. And so I left the meeting and I called the FBI back and I said, I can get you in contact with the judge. And here's the statute we're going to use. They drafted the warrant. They hit his house. He confessed to everything. He had 15 pipe bombs with fragmentation.
I remember this happening in our little town of Burleson.
And that was the kickoff point. I realized that if you have to have someone in there that's going to take things seriously. I don't know if it's because he's not up on modern culture, what's happening outside of the office of all the school shootings and stuff like that, but that's a hyper sensitive, hyper serious situation. And I was just completely floored by how his response was, we just don't need another case right now. If the feds want to do something, they can do something. I was thinking, I don't care who does something, as long as somebody gets this done. I can't believe we're going to do any form of obstruction and not let them get to a judge. They were just calling, they were like, we need an introduction to a judge. And it's, no, don't get involved.
Did you get any repercussions for kind of going around his wishes like that?
I don't know if he did it, if he knew I did it at the time. And by the time it all came out, I didn't get any repercussions because it was a big deal. The case turned out to be, it was the next Uvalde, Texas situation.
I had 3 or 4 of my friends call me because they think I know everything about what's going on in this community. From outside Burleson, not within it. Did you know what this is going on? I just saw this in the paper. I saw this on the news. They live in the Metroplex area, or a couple. My cousin who lives out of state was asking about it.
Right.
And, so that was a big deal.
It was, but it's surprising when we talked to people in Burleson, most people until this campaign didn't even know about it.
Well, they weren't paying attention. And I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of people don't pay attention to the news as much as they used to. We don't have a daily
Particularly
paper.
Local.
Yeah. We don't, they don't watch the news much anymore because they think it's trash or it's biased or whatever. So
there's some truth to all that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess so. But I think people are less informed of what's going on in the world. Maybe that's one of the impetuses I had about doing this in the first place back 4.5 years ago. But they don't pay attention to what's going on around them as much. There was an event over at BHS about 10 days ago. They found a young man in the car with a gun.
Heard about that.
Yeah. And the only way I would have heard about that is I saw it on Facebook. And I don't like using Facebook as a source of my news at all. And so I'd like to know more what's going on. Now, that being said, not much long after all the gossip had taken place, Burleson PD put out their announcements and whatever else, and they put it on social media, and that's fine. But sometimes the people react before the police can give the news out. There was an event yesterday Did you know about that?
But it's actually, I think it was about the same time you were out voting.
Yes, it was. We were coming home, and we live in East Renfro, and we drove by, and we saw about 7 or 8 cop cars, county sheriff, constable, and a drone flying around. I said, this is not something that is a light thing. This is not a insignificant thing. Turns out it was a active shooter thing.
Exactly.
And schools were locked down around it. It was pretty concerning. I hope that this is not a case that gets kicked under the rug kind of thing.
Right.
You know, and if it's you involved, I bet it won't be. Let's say that, you don't have a Democratic opponent.
Correct.
So really we'll know Tuesday night, Tuesday night.
Exactly.
Assuming you win, when do you take over?
So you'd be January 1st, 25.
Okay. That's a long ways off.
That's a long ways off, isn't it?
Well, it is for you. I mean, you got to make a living between now and then.
Exactly,
right? Yeah. So what will you be doing?
I haven't got that part figured out. So my time horizon is March 5th, and then whatever happens after that, I don't know. It is... I think it is going to be challenging because most people don't want to hire somebody for 7 months. You know, it's funny. Employers want to hire that you're going to work to the day you die for them. So that's kind of the viewpoint. I try to get 2 jobs during this process, but they all know about the campaign where they found out during the process, and they said, we're looking for something more long term. So it's been impossible to get a job during the campaign process, and I kind of think I'm gonna have the same difficulty if I win on March 5th going forward for the next year. So it's the price of doing business, I guess.
I guess. I mean, it really is a sacrifice on your part. Like a lot of the incumbents. Well, let me rephrase this. There has been a concerted effort by certain factors within the Republican Party that's been pushing certain candidates, and you're not one of those candidates, are you?
Correct.
Has that been a problem for you to overcome?
Only in the sense, there's a bunch of wars going on, like you're saying, within the Republican Party. Mr. Burns' race is a big thing, and so there's a bunch of money falling in there, but in the trickle-down effect, there's the flyer out there, I think it's called Rural Texans, or Conservative Rural Texans, or something like that. They're really just fighting for Burns. But they have a voter's guide, and the voter's guide is everybody that's an incumbent's listed below, because they're trying to make it seem like it's not a Burns support pack. And I have nothing against Mr. Burns, but the problem is down the ballot, they're handing this out like these are the only conservative candidates around, but they're just simply everybody that's the incumbent.
The thing is, liberal, conservative, et cetera, how much does that impact the job? I mean, we're not talking about a policymaker. We're talking about a judge.
Right.
And, well, not a judge, but, adjudicating the law and things of that nature. Does that really impact liberal, conservative? I mean, they throw that around like
I think it can a little bit. I've been asked that question about why does it matter if you're Republican or, whatnot. Everybody has a worldview, right? And how you view the world and what causes crime and all the things, how you view it causes how you're going to approach things. So if you have a very liberal DA in, let's say, Dallas or Harris County, and they go, well, theft is just a byproduct of, whatever, so they stop prosecuting thefts.
Well, I saw that in Dallas County. The DA over there said basically you have to, if you commit a misdemeanor under $700 or something like that, $750, that they're not even going to bother. Like, well, that's just basically giving them a credit card.
Exactly. You've made it legal to steal under that amount.
Yeah, and I saw that. Was it John Cruzon is his name?
I think so.
Yeah, and I just thought, that's ludicrous. And of course, then you got the DA in New York that's been all his time, with Donald Trump while they're having people killed on the streets. And I think that's what people see.
Right.
They don't want to hear. But I'm thinking, we're not Manhattan, we're not Dallas.
Right.
We're still Johnson County. And I don't see how being a liberal conservative is really going to impact that, because everybody's conservative practically.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's like so it's not going to...
I think in our race between Mr. Han and I don't think that's the issue.
I don't think so either. Yeah. Well, we're getting close, and I'd like to give you another opportunity to make a commercial, if you will, if you want.
Okay. Well, I'm just simply asking for everybody to go to goodforda.com and just check it out. I would love your vote. I really would. But I want everybody to be informed. I think the worst thing that could happen in this race is just simply getting to the ballot box and not realizing the difference between the two candidates. I think it's important to be an informed voter. And so if you go there, you check out my website. I think Mr. Hannon may have a website too now. Go to his, talk to people, talk to police officers. That's my biggest pitch for me is if you talk to law enforcement, people who actually work the cases, who do they think is going to do the best job for the next 4 years for Johnson County to keep Johnson County safe, which is Mr. Hanna's slogan, but who is actually going to do that? who's actually going to prosecute not just drugs, but all the other crimes. But that's all I'm asking for. It's for people to be informed. I would love to say, all politicians say, I need your vote. I want your vote. I just want people to be informed and then make a decision that's best for them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good ad. I'll go ahead and tell my personal story. Yesterday, like I said, I went and voted. And to be honest, it was, the couple of races are no-brainers. I voted for Burns, and, other races, I'll just leave it at that. I voted a few others and whatnot. But when it came to your race, some people I know and respect, older police officers in some cases, supported Dale Hanna. But other people I know, younger people, support you. And I ended up, Robin and I voted for you. Okay. And we did that primarily because I really do think that there's too many stories out there of, I don't want to say negligence, but just not enough priority on certain other cases. And I had heard that story from another source about the bomb, the situation, and how we let the ball drop almost. And that concerns me. And I really do also think that because of the situation, we've had leadership in these positions for so long, they're somewhat entrenched in these positions and in their way of doing business and the way they think. And there's really very little to change them. I think a change is necessary. So I hope you win.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
If you don't, I hope you get a job.
Me too.
Well, I think you'll probably get some offers afterwards if things don't happen. Do you have any inkling at all how this is going to turn out?
No, I don't. So my emotional barometer is not any indication of factual outcomes. So I have no idea. There are no polls. Everybody asks me that question. Like, how's the campaign going? Some people think that early voting numbers come out and you know where you fall already. No, everything after 7 o'clock on next Tuesday, numbers are going to start rolling out. And hopefully we know by the end of the night, generally local elections you do. But no, I have no idea. Signs out in the street, all this stuff is no indication of how this is actually going to break. Yeah. So who knows?
It really is tough. The city candidates tell me the same thing. They don't have any real idea. And trying to analyze the early vote is kind of a waste of time.
It is.
Because you don't know. People,
it's reading tea leaves.
It is. Or you think, I'll know this person. I know how he votes. And he may end up voting totally different. You never know. So it doesn't matter. But like I said, if my endorsement, my support means anything in your campaign, that's fine. I hope so.
I appreciate it. I really do.
But as far as everything else is kind of out of our hands, isn't it?
It is.
Ultimately, it's out of everybody's hands.
It is, yeah.
And so, Taylor, you still with us?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm here.
I know. Are you doing all right back there? I mean, I haven't heard much
I'm
from
good.
you. Okay. All right. On Thursday, we're going to have Jennifer Woods from Harvest House. Next week, we're going to take a little break from politics, but I do have one candidate coming on Thursday morning. We're doing an extra show because it's really a busy time.
It is.
It is, with the local races coming on top of the primaries and such. But I have the Chamber of Commerce on Monday. I have Tiffany Nico with Local Life on Tuesday. And then Thursday in the morning, I have Brandon Crisp, who's running for Place 3. And I had his opponent, Alexa Bedeker, on yesterday, and that was a really good show.
I saw that show yesterday.
Yeah. And then at 11, we have the man who runs Doughboy Donuts.
Okay.
Yeah, so
He is bringing samples, right?
Yes, I've asked Robin about that. Because he does a lot of stuff with Southern Jim. We do have these events, and he'll bring them.
Now, that's all Hidden Creek, right? Is that where that place is?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's right near Wild, and there's several other things like a roasted beaneries there now. And
exactly, yeah.
Mr. Poke or something like that. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Poke.
What is that?
It's I'm gonna get in trouble because I don't really know. It's basically like a deconstructed sushi in a bowl. Is what my understanding is.
Ooh, I'm not a big sushi fan.
Oh, you got to try it.
Okay,
it's good.
My kids say the same thing. He said, "Oh, don't be such an old fuddy-duddy." Anyway, we'll see y'all on Thursday.